everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rin. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. How are you doing? I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. Today let's do another watercolor illustration together. This was very much a experience of just kind of trusting the process. I have this illustration obviously that has ducks and then a house in the background and some trees, like a tree line. I was very unconfident starting this because I had no clue what I was doing, and I really felt like it wasn't looking good the entire way through the process. I'll share my final thoughts on how I feel like this turned out at the end of the video. But yeah, so I started with just kind of putting a ton of water. Well, not a ton, but like wetting the paper down to start the water, and then just kind of slowly building up some layers, and then moving on here to the background. I only used my vintage pastels palette and just a handful of colors off of my Daniel Smith watercolor sample page for this illustration. I will say something I really loved about pretty much just using my vintage pastels palette for the last couple paintings is it's really challenged me on my color mixing skills, and I feel like I've gotten a lot better and a lot more comfortable color mixing, so that's super nice. So yeah, here I'm just putting down some greens just to try and build up that tree line in the background, and then here I did some color mixing to try and make a little bit of a brown, which is kind of hard with the vintage pastels palette, but because these colors are all created to go together, I feel like this works very well as brown in the context of this illustration, or in the context of all of these other colors, if that makes sense. I was happy with how these trees turned out. I think they might be one of my favorite things I painted on this page. I really struggled just sketching this out in general. I don't know, maybe I'm just not built for like drawing ducks, because I struggled so much with drawing the DuckTales characters, and then these ducks as well were extremely difficult for me to draw. I felt like they didn't look good, and thank you to my mom for encouraging me to still paint this, because I would have like thrown it in the trash probably and not even have tried, because I felt like this was so far out of my current skill level, and also just like it didn't look good in general. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think of this painting and like things you think could make it better. Am I just being my own worst critic? Because I think that's very common, especially in creatives, but I have really been wanting to draw some ducks, so this was my attempt at it. I kind of wish with all of these colors I had done even more layering and made them even more vibrant and pigmented. I think the biggest thing I don't like about this painting at the end of it is that the colors aren't saturated enough, which I think I could have resolved if I would have just done more layers and probably used less water in my actual watercolors, but that's okay. This painting was very much a learning process, and it turned out better than I expected it to. I will say that. I was pretty happy with this like tree line, this nature line at the back of the painting. I feel like I've learned, or I am learning through this particular illustration, that there's a delicate balance between making things very detailed and keeping them simple shapes that I'm trying to learn. And then here I went back over the water and was just thinking I was kind of going to make more of these like water texture lines, the same way I started painting the flower field on my last illustration. I have mixed feelings about this. The water is the thing I don't like the most at the end of this painting, outside of things not being as pigmented as I want them to. I'm not really happy with how the water turned out, but I think that's mostly because I wish it was more pigmented. I kind of wish I had used my Winsor Newton palette for this, because those blues are so much more vibrant. I feel like it would have looked better overall, but that's okay because this was a learning process. And like I said, I do feel like it turned out better than I thought it would. I also really struggled with just making the water look more interesting. I don't know, visually, I feel like this water on this illustration just does not look very interesting, even at the end after I add all my highlights and everything. So that's something I will want to continue to work on in the future to get better at. I then started working on the foreground. I believe this is the foreground. I always get those confused. But the foreground here, wanting to add some greenery closer to the viewer, so making it larger, just to add some more depth and interest, visual interest to the illustration. I do go back in to these flowers and use some orange with them. You can't really see it on camera. It's a lot easier to see in person, just to help pull in the orange from the duck's beaks as well. The ducks, I will say, were a lot of fun to paint. I really enjoyed just adding the shading with some of the purple and pinks and blue. I think I used even a little bit of green from my pastels palette, just as a nice way to get some shading while there's still being some color. And then here I am going in with my trusty Posca pen. I really think this is actually starting to run out of ink. I need to buy a new one. I just kind of been putting it off because Posca pens are very expensive. If you know a good Posca pen alternative, please leave it in the comments down below. I'd really appreciate it. I love my Posca pen so much. I know I talk about it all the time. It works so well, but they are so pricey. So I guess it's like a good trade-off, though. You're spending your money on good quality art supplies. But then I wanted to line this illustration with colored pencils, same way I always do, just starting off with one color, in this case pink, and then I do go back through with blue and purple just to add a little bit more pops of color and dimension where I feel like it needs it. Also, I don't know why I'm losing my voice. It's because I'm recording a voiceover and I get nervous, I guess. And then I really debated whether or not to add glitter, but it's me, so of course we had to add some glitter here at the end. I added some just from some more sparkles on the water, and that's always a good decision in my mind. It always looks so pretty. And this is the finished illustration. Let me know what you think of this. I'm very on the fence. I really wish I had used different colors for the water at least, and that the image was just more vibrant. I do really like how these ducks turned out. I think they actually looked a lot cuter than I was expecting them to. And overall, this was a great learning process. So thank you so much for watching this video. Remember to be kind and stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next one.